As I was saying, I just want to make 2 points in the talk today. What is history? What is oral history? Regarding the first point, what is history, I want to suggest that we can think in terms of 3 types of history. 3 jenis sejarah. Sejarah resmi, sejarah alternatif, dan sejarah rakyat. Regarding the second point, what is oral history, I want to suggest that we must think of oral history, or we should think of oral history in conjunction with the concept of memory. How do you translate memory? Ingatan? Ingatan. And in that regard, we have to ask ourselves, what is special about oral history? Apa istimewanya? Dan what is different about oral history? Apa perbezaannya? If it is based, kalau dia bergantung pada ingatan individu, which is what it is, right? I mean, Syed is 80, sometimes he forgets to bring his pen, he forgets. So what does oral history mean if it is based on individual memory? Okay, titik pertama, apakah sejarah dan jenis-jenis sejarah? Pada suatu masa dulu, sejarah adalah satu mata pelajaran yang mati, yang berdebu, yang tidak ada orang yang tertarik, seperti Dr. Doku-Andrew. Jika anda bernasib baik, anda tidak pun perlu mengambilnya di sekolah, kan? Tetapi hari ini, sejarah adalah berita. Jika anda melihat surat khabar, kalau ada orang-orang di sini yang masih membaca akhbar arus perdana, buat masa ini, sejarah sentiasa membuat penampilan. Let me just give you a few examples. Di Kedah, some recent examples. Di Kedah, kuil lama dari abad ke-8 until the 13th century, kuil lama telah dimusnahkan untuk memberi laluan kepada pembangunan perumahan baru. I'm sure you read about that news. That's about history. Itu terlibat sejarah. Di Melaka, bekas Perdana Menteri Ali Rustam mengumumkan bahawa penyelidikan oleh ahli sejarah tempatan membuktikan bahawa bangsa Melayu berasal dari Timur Tengah. That's about history. Jinping menulis memoir beliau, My Side of History. Dan apabila beliau meninggal pada Hari Malaysia, abunya tidak dibenarkan dibawa balik ke Malaysia. That's about history. Dan kerajaan, as Syed mentioned recently, kerajaan Malaysia sedang menimbangkan membuat sejarah, be warned, membuat sejarah mata pelajaran wajib di sekolah-sekolah. That shows how important history is today in Malaysia. History matters. Jadi jelasnya di Malaysia hari ini, history matters. Sejarah menjadi penting. Itulah sebabnya kita perlu berfikir lebih lanjut mengenai istilah itu, sejarah. Apa yang sejarah? Dan saya ingin mencadangkan perbezaan berikut ialah sejarah rasmi, sejarah alternatif, dan sejarah rakyat. So, what is sejarah rasmi, official history? I think that's pretty clear by now. I think Syed's talk made it very clear what sejarah rasmi is. Sejarah rasmi is that which is found in our school textbooks. It's what is repeated, what is reproduced in our newspapers, especially the mainstream papers, and it is what is repeated ad nauseum by our politicians on every occasion. It is an official history is always a political narrative. It's a political story that is more often than not almost exclusively based upon the actions of the so-called founding fathers of the nation. Pengasas kolonial lah, bapa-bapa pengasas negara. It is the kind of history, we're talking about kinds of history, jenis sejarah kan? It is the kind of history that is written with the authority of the state. For the state. For the interest of the state. With the power of the state, dengan kuasa kerajaan, and for the interest of the state. And the power of the state is such that most citizens think, most of us, at least when we were still in school, think that official history is what history is. And that if it is official history, then it must be true. Kalau itu sejarah resmi, mestilah dia benar. Okay, that's official history. I don't have to go into that anymore. Then, second type of history that we can call alternative history, and I think that was very clear. That's what Syed was telling us about, and that's what you see on that board as well. Although Syed said official history is very often biased, I think we must also bear in mind that alternative history can also be biased. Like there's a strong bias in favor of the University of Malaya on that blackboard. Okay, alternative history. Sejarah alternatif memberi tumpuan kepada ketidakhadiran, ketinggalan, dan gangguan, distortions yang berada dalam naratif politik arus perdana rasmi. I think Syed said official history is written by the winners of history. And that was actually a statement that is very often attributed to Winston Churchill. History is written by the winners. And of course, their view is biased. It is selective. It gives, in the case of Malaysia, Syed said, it is biased in favor of the golongan yang atas. It is biased in favor of what else? There were 4 things. Anyway, they will be in the text. It's very clear. So that's necessary to reinstate the voices of those, in a way, who were the losers of history, but whose role in history have not been recognized, have been denied, have been effaced, have been wiped out. That is the intention of alternative history. But we must bear in mind that this kind of alternative history is very often also a political narrative. It is also about political actors and their role in the making of the nation. It includes a different set of players, and it may be more inclusive in that it goes down to the base, but it is still a political narrative. And in that respect, it is perhaps still too narrow for us to base our national story on. And so we can think of a third term, a third type of history, which we have called here sejarah rakyat, people's history. I mean, that's the name of the organization, Pusat Sejarah Rakyat. Yeah, you see, history, sejarah, bukan saja kisah hero atau mangsa, winner or loser. Sejarah politik, yeah, we have to include ordinary people, like your grandmother, like Well, look at, oh no, that has been pasted over. What was that sign? The police, oh, later, well, pasted over. Okay, so for me, the importance of Sejarah Rakyat, of a people's history, really came when one day I was sitting together with Said Zahari. Now, Said Zahari, dia adalah satu ikon, kan? Icon of the alternative history of Malaysia and Singapore. He spent over, how many years did he spend in jail, Said? 19 years. Dipenjarakan di Singapura. He was the editor of the Utus. He was a leading journalist in Malaysia. Dia dipenjarakan 19 tahun di Singapura. So I was in his house, he was being interviewed, and I was sitting next to his wife. Dan istrinya said to me, dia mudah dia cakap, saya yang menderita, dia duduk dalam penjara saja. She was not a Singaporean. At that time, Said Zahari was in prison in Singapore. She was a Malaysian. She had to, she was telling me, ulang alik dari Johor Bahru dan Singapura every 2 weeks. Cari makan untuk anak-anak who were very small at that time. Dia yang menderita. Said Zahari duduk dalam penjara, duduk saja. Nobody has taken her story. In the meantime, she has passed away. It couldn't have been easy bringing up a family on your own as a woman for 19 years. A lot of the stories have been which went into not just our political organizations, not just our political struggles, but our family struggles, our community struggles were born by women who kept their families alive while their men struggled in the political arena. So these are the kinds of stories we need to capture as well. We need to document as well. That would be sejarah rakyat. Sejarah yang hendak kita lakukan. But as Rina pointed out when she was introducing herself, people's histories is not just about lives. I mean, like the wife of Istri Said Zahari, that's a life. People's histories can be found in objects. You're talking about design history. Can be found in the history of places. So you see, this Jalan Pudu was where Pudu prison was. Very important landmark in the history of KL and in the history of this country. My uncle was imprisoned there by the British for 7 years in the 1950s. If we were to do a study of the history of Jalan Pudu as a place, we could learn a lot about the history of this nation. That blue piece, that blue plaque that has been pasted over when Heng Ling came in, I think it says, louder please? Yes, she came in and she said, oh, that's where I was brought to. We were brought to when we were detained during Operasi Lalang. So the memories that things evoke, the stories that things can tell, the stories that places can tell, these are the kinds of oral history projects that we could do as well. Lives, things, places, okay, which encompass more than just an alternative history, more than just a political narrative. This would be istilah yang paling menyeluruh. Sejarah rakyat meliputi sejarah alternatif. Ia juga meliputi sejarah rasmi. I think the point that Lynn made just now was very important. These distinctions, sejarah rasmi, sejarah alternatif, sejarah rakyat, they are conceptual distinctions. It doesn't mean that something must be sejarah rasmi, something else must be sejarah rakyat. In the real world of stories, Sejarah rasmi also include sejarah rakyat, may also include sejarah alternatif. These are distinctions we are making. They are working definitions. Definisi bekerja, kasar, rough working distinctions for ourselves in order that we can maybe understand better when we're talking to each other, and in order that we can understand better what it is that we can do in this project, or what it is that we are attempting to do in this project. Okay. Right, let me go on to the second point. We'll talk more about it as we go on. But let me go on now to the second question. Apakah sejarah lisan? And as I said, the question we can ask there is, how is oral history different? And what is special about oral history? I think here I want to make just 4 points. The first is voice. The second is suara. The second is ingatan, memory. The third is meaning. Meaning, kalau bahasa Malaysia, maksud ataupun makna. What is the proper translation? Meaning. Makna, bukan maksud. Huh? Okay. And the fourth is context. So voice, suara, memory, ingatan, makna, meaning, context. Okay, voice. Well, obviously, oral history must be based on voice, orality. That, in fact, is the strength of oral history. It's what makes it special and what makes it so important, so useful. Because it can also give voice to those who do not write. For example, orang asli. I think this is Syed can write, so he doesn't feel bad that his story has not been recorded orally. But not everybody can write. My grandmother, who had to flee during the Japanese occupation, and who lost her husband and who brought the family up on her own during the hard years of the war, she couldn't write. So her story has never been told. That is the strength of oral history. Okay. Voice. I think that was the point that Sharon was making also, why that oral history can give voice to those who have been hidden from history. There is a second reason why oral history is special and why it matters, why it is different, is memory, ingatan. Sejarah lisan bergantung kepada ingatan. And bukan saja ingatan, tapi ingatan individu. It depends on memory. Now, that's advantages and disadvantages because we know, Syed and I know, memory is selective. Memory sometimes fails us. And memory is sometimes false, mistaken. So the point is, oral history using memory as a source, sebagai sumber in fakta-fakta, is treacherous, is dangerous. But there is I don't know whether you guys have heard of somebody called Alessandro Portelli. He is one of the leading practitioners, leading oral historians today. And I want to quote something which he said. He did a study of the workers' movement in the 1940s after the war in a town in Italy. And he said, oral histories reveal, and I quote, reveal less about the events as such than about, oh sorry, I went ahead. I was still at memory. Okay, so memory can be mistaken, and it can be wrong. Before I quote Portelli, let me quote Schachter. He's a famous researcher, psychologist in the psychology of memory. So he said the point regarding ingatan, memory, he said, is that memory is not like a video recorder. I think that's the most important point. It is not like a video recorder. You record what you see and you reproduce what you see accurately and authentically. Memory, he says, is a constructive activity. In other words, we make it up as we go along. And it changes. It depends on when you are telling a story. It depends to whom you are telling the story. Which brings us to, in other words, memory is subjective. Which brings us to the third point, magna, meaning. And this is what Portelli says. This historian who did a study of the workers' movement in Italy in the 1940s. He says, oral history reveals less about the events as such than about their meaning. Oral histories tell us not just what people did, but what they wanted to do, what they believed they were doing, and what they now think they actually did. So I think we really have to bear that in mind. Sejarah lisan, don't think I can, I need to repeat that in Malay. So, what have I covered so far? Voice, memory, meaning. The fourth point, context. Good, you got it. Oral history is thus, in addition to facts about voice, about memory, and about subjective meaning. Meaning, however, makna, perlukan konteks. Hanya boleh diperolehi dari konteks. Life histories have to be situated in the context of time and space. Portelli writes about, his objective was to research about the workers' movement, the labor movement. But he said when he started interviewing people, the narrators insisted on telling him about their family's history and the history of the town when they were talking about the events that he was interested in. He said he wasn't interested at first in their life histories or in the history of the town. He wanted to do a history of the workers' movement. But the context of family, Maimuna makes that very clear from her contributions there. The context of family, of community, of place. The University of Malaya is obviously very important in the history of the making of Malaysia. The context of time and of space is very important to the individual who is telling the story. Because although memory is the memory of the individual, memory is formed by the collective in which we live. Memory is formed by the times in which we live. And that's why that timeline, the key events in Malaysia are so important, because that's how the nation is formed. It is the individual who remembers, but his or her memories are invariably shaped by the social context. The family, the town, the community, the generation to which an individual belongs, the nation. Okay. All the collective events which have shaped the life experience of the individual. And all those collective events which have shaped the life of the nation. So I think we can talk about generations of Malaysians too. There's the Merdeka generation, etc. Okay, that's it. I mean, basically, that's an attempt to provide more of a rangka, a framework for locating what we need to do in the context of oral history regarding the making of the nation. Okay. Let me make two final points. Why is this so important to do now? Because that Merdeka that generation that still has an individual memory of the Japanese occupation, of the war, of the events leading to Merdeka, that Merdeka generation to which Syed belongs, they are not going to be with us for much longer. In fact, some have already gone. So there's an urgency to doing oral history interviews now, because actually it's now or never for that Merdeka generation. And that, in a way, for alternative history, is the most important generation. The second point, point that I want to make in this connection, I don't know whether all of you caught this news a few weeks ago that was reported in a British newspaper, that in 1957, just when Merdeka was going to take place and a new local national leadership was going to take over the country and therefore have access to all the confidential files, which were previously confidential only for the eyes of the British officials, truckloads of files, confidential files, were moving from Kuala Lumpur to Singapore, because Singapore tidak dapat kemerdekaan in 1957. They moved, truckloads of files were brought down to Singapore to the Sembawang Naval Base and destroyed. It was just revealed a few weeks ago because of the archive which was opened after 50 years of Merdeka. And it said there was a wholesale destruction of files pertaining to the Merdeka period. That's official history, how selective it is, how biased it is, and how many absences there are. So the only witnesses of that time that we still have are people like Syed, the Merdeka generation. If we don't do an oral history interview with him soon, all that will be lost. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.